Couldn't do that with an accent. I was trying to do a California accent, but I guess I don't have one.
Whoa, gnarly dude, what's up? So yeah, we're doing great out here. Rob, it seems like you've sent us some of that monsoon moisture. We had a couple of showers this morning, right? Nothing significant, only enough to put dirty blotches all over my nice midnight blue truck. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Well, I know you've been hard at work putting a new bench together. And
I did.
Did you finally get everything you need to do that?
I did. It's one of those rocker or swing benches, right? That I'd had, and I rebuilt. All the wood got bad, and I rebuilt it, sanded it all down, repainted all the metal parts, and put new nice Douglas fir stuff on it. But when I was putting the armrests on, I did them both the same, and they need to be opposite, one for left and one for right. So I realized at the last minute that I messed that one up. So when you called me, I was in the hardware store.
Oh, so now that you have experience, you can come over here and do mine.
Yeah, absolutely. I love doing this stuff, Rob. So it was fun to do.
Between that and your gardening expertise, it's amazing. We should put some pictures up of your place because it's really awesome what you've done with your landscaping and it's good to say that because we are now one day past July Water Smart, which is what? Smart Irrigation Month.
Yep, that's right. Smart Irrigation Month, yeah. And
we should tell everybody that just because the month is over, don't stop what you're doing.
Absolutely, that's a perfect thing to say, and I'll tell you, Rob, because you asked me earlier today, right? What was the savings? And you know that I've been tracking that water savings since I converted, over. So yes. Here it is. I had a monthly bill, gallons wise, that was anywhere between 17,500 and 22,000 gallons per month. And now I am under 9,000 here in the hottest part of the summer. And when it's not the summer and I don't irrigate my lawn and other stuff like that, I've been down as low as 4,800, 4,700 gallons. So I've gone from 22,000 down to an average of about 9,000.
Well, that's awesome. And hope everybody else looks up some of the things that everybody does. I mean, you can go to Irrigation Association or your local water district, and they have all this information to tell you how you can convert and change and modify and what new technologies out there to help you. And so that's a good thing. At least everybody's trying.
Yeah, just to tag on note to that, the Metropolitan Water District here down, but the state of California has renewed some funding for turf removal and conversion, right? If you qualify and you do all the right stuff, the Metropolitan Water District has increased the square footage reimbursement from $2 to $3. So there you go.
But also remember, there's a tax applied to that.
Absolutely is. When you get your rebate check, watch out.
Yeah, don't call your water agency and yell at them. You should know ahead of time that in California they do tax your rebate money.
Well, everybody knows because you won't get your rebate unless you send them a W-9. So
that's right. So let's bring in Ms. Chris Austin. And how are you doing out in the Central California area?
Oh, well, we're here a little bit south of the Park Fire, which is still burning, but not anything like it was, when in the first days after it broke out. But it's very smoky up here in the North Valley, and it smells pretty bad outside. But it's been, we're at 101 now, but our last couple days, we were in even the low 90s over the weekend. So the smoke does have some benefit. It cooled us down nicely. But yes, we're all doing okay up here in Chico.
It's going the opposite direction of you, though, right?
Yes.
Okay, good.
The wind sort of turned the smoke around a little bit, but yeah, it's not. And actually, the evacuation zones are there aren't very many of them at this point. It's kind of burning in some very remote areas right now. Hard to reach remote areas.
Well,
at least
good.
That's my understanding.
Well, we're glad you're safe and it's doing well for you, everything moving the other direction, so that's great. Hey, so I've been reading, I understand that U.S. representatives Mike Thompson and John Garamendi have been very vociferous and have sent a letter to your governor, and it's talking about they're opposing the tunnel. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, yeah, they've been very vocal, especially Congressman Garamendi, about their dislike for the Delta Tunnel and that they don't want it. This is a common feeling, I think, up here in Northern California. Most of the legislators, or if they speak about it, they're generally against it, as is Stockton, sort of the areas that would not benefit from the water that would come from it are sort of, they tend to be opposed to it because most of their constituents are opposed to it. Congressman Josh Harder has been trying to do some things in Washington, D.C. that I don't think are very effective, mainly because when the tunnel was first conceived and in its first years of development, back before it became, during the Brown administration and the Schwarzenegger administration, before it became the Newsom administration, it was a two-tunnel project, and the Bureau of Reclamation and the Federal Central Valley Project were going to participate. But as that thing rolled around and got to a decision point, the largest irrigation district in the San Joaquin Valley said, no, we're not going to participate. So that sort of threw the whole plan out of whack. So when Newsom came in, was elected and started his term, he pared it down to a one-tunnel option, and it does not include the federal Central Valley project. This would be for State Water Project only. So there really isn't a federal nexus with which he can insert himself and make some changes, at least not that I see. But again, sometimes with these politicians, sometimes I think maybe they do things more for their constituents than for what's really practical. Because he's demanding that the Bureau of Reclamation not be allowed to participate, and they're not, and they're not intended to participate. So it's kind of interesting. We'll see how it goes. It's really hard to say. There's a definite feeling for the people in Northern California, where most of the water is generated, that they don't care for the water being sent south. And to some degree, some say, well, you can send some water south. The extreme people are like, no water should go south. And for the most part, that's sort of been the problem with the water situation in California, is that, there is a north-south divide, and I think that the people in Northern California feel that they've had to bear the impacts of all this water being sent south, and so they're kind of in general opposed to it. And the people in the southern San Joaquin Valley that doesn't have a lot of water, and in Southern California, they need the water because they don't get enough of resources, local resources. So, therein lies the rub. Is the water in Northern California everyone's water, or is it Northern California's water? Sometimes we debate that. And I think the people from Southern California would tell you it's all one water, it belongs to all of us in the state. And the people in Northern California kind of think, well, this is kind of our water because it generates here, and, they feel differently. So.
Yeah, that's kind of tough. Has Newsom said anything about the comments? Has he responded to Garamendi and Thompson? Do you know?
Oh, well, no, he doesn't need to. We're not at a decision point, and at this point in time. So I kind of think Newsom's got other things that he's dealing with, and frankly, legislators sending governor letters on policies they don't like is, that's pretty much all in the day's work. So I'm not sure Newsom's very concerned about that at all. It's really a tricky issue, and we kind of have to, work on this moving forward, because how we move water around the state is kind of important, especially it's important to the economy. And, there's this feeling like, well, in Northern California, we don't want to send that water south, but the truth is that one thing that Southern California does send north is a lot of tax revenue and money. Right. And if you cut off the water, you're going to mess with the economy. And I just it's going to be really interesting to see how things play for Southern California, because Northern California is not really excited about sending water. And there's a lot of things going on the Colorado River, and a lot of negotiations going on there. And, on the Colorado River, they're not really happy with sending all this water to California either. So
that's pretty tough. I noticed I read some. Chris, go ahead. I'll let you jump in.
No, I was just going to say, kind of, you mentioned the park fire, and I know you answered a couple of questions about that as it relates to you, and I'm glad you're safe, Chris, and missed you last week, for sure. But, I thought the Cal Matters article that you have on Maven's notebook, by the way, I thought it was great. I think it was Rachel Becker that wrote it. That talked about all the species that have the potential of being, hurt by this. And, not flora and fauna. Right? I thought that was a great article. I mean, she really put the critically at-risk stuff right at the beginning of her article. And, a lot of people think about the fire and its effect on humans and property and all that stuff. And that is, of course, important and paramount. But, we shouldn't forget that there's other threats as well, right?
Yes, and the area that they're burning through, that the fire is burning through right now, is just kind of some of the more precious, untouched areas that we have in the state. A couple weeks ago, my husband and I went up to Chester, which is around Lake Almanor. Yeah, and we drove right up the area where this fire has been burning. And the couple things that I will note, it was all like very, very remote. And Lake Almanor it's just kind of like a little treasure. I guess I probably shouldn't say this, but it's as pretty as Lake Tahoe, but not nearly as big, but very similar to Lake Tahoe, and very much not urbanized. Like, there isn't even a stoplight anywhere around Lake Almanor. It's very remote, untouched, unspoiled. And Deer Creek is one of this treasured salmon runs that we have here in the Northern California. And there's a lot of concern for the salmon in these watersheds that we've really treasured through the years. So we'll see what happens. One thing that when we were up there at Lake Almanor, there's a big fire scar where the Dixie Fire came through. I think it was about 4 years ago. And they're doing a lot of work on the hillside. And what I thought was interesting is on the other side, into eastern California, sort of northeastern California, they have really been working on the forest and cleaning up the undergrowth. And we drove through large areas where they had really swept out the undergrowth in a lot of areas, like several acres on either side of the road for what we could see. So it will be interesting to see how this type of treatment to the forest, works come when fire eventually sets in there. So.
Interesting. So good news you also had in your blog was about Klamath, the reservoir being taken down, and how they're advancing and ahead of schedule, which is amazing.
Damn.
Yeah. They're removing the dam. I think all 4 dams are out now, and so now there's a lot of restoration that needs to happen. When the dams were drained, there was a lot of sediment, and the footprint of the reservoir is really thick and muddy, and people got very upset about this, but they knew that this was going to happen. There isn't anything that could really be done. You have to drain it out, and then they have to deal with the sediment that's in the reservoirs. But they are working to replant that area. They've been working on establishing native plants, and because if you're going to restore a large area like that with native plants, it's not like you go down to Lowe's and you say, okay, give me a couple 100 pounds of this, native plant seed. You have to start ahead of time, and you have to learn how to propagate, and then collect the seeds so that you can then go plant. So they've been working on this for years, and what's really going to be exciting is to see how the landscape comes alive. This is the hard part. The project has received a lot of criticism because of the muddy mess that's left behind. But all signs are that this is normal, and it's going to be restored. They took out a dam on the Elwha River in Washington, and they had the first year a lot of sediment and a lot of stuff had kind of flushed through the system, but it's thriving now. Native species are now thriving in that watershed, and I think the same is going to happen for the Klamath River watersheds, but we do have to get through this kind of muddy time. They're out there working in force.
So do they take away all the cement structures from the dam?
As much as they can. I'm not sure if they're going to dig them completely out, but they're definitely out of the way of the river and off to the side, so that they won't be getting river flows, I would imagine, just the edges.
Okay. And one other thing I want to go over, if you can update us and our listeners about the water project delivery capability report that came out, and what the hot points are in that.
Yeah, that came out yesterday, and the gist of it is that this is a report that DWR does. They kind of look to the future, and they kind of look at conditions and come up with an idea of how much they think going into the future that they're going to be able to deliver water. How much water can they deliver? And this is important because all these cities, especially in a place like Southern California, have to plan for where they're going to get their water. And, they know how much water they have access to, and they're looking at projections for growth and, whatever else is happening in their area. And they need to make sure they have adequate water supplies. This is no small task in Southern California, mind you. So these numbers are important. And what they have found is that, because of climate change and drying conditions into the future, that the State Water Project could lose as much as 23% of how much it's able to deliver, or 496,000 acre feet per year on average that it's going to go down. So they're of course using this to talk about the need to modernize the State Water Project. That's how they are sort of framing the Delta Conveyance Project. It's a climate change and modernization project for the State Water Project. It's how they've been building it. So, certainly we know that that our water supplies are going to be challenging going into the future, especially with the heat. There were some stories about, in the excessive heat, how that increased evaporation at the reservoirs. So there's really no reason not to believe that we're going to have less water in the future. So we're going to have to figure out how we're going to deal with that, going forward. And, so that's kind of where we're at.
Well, Mr. David, I have a question for you. I know you're an avid fisherman, and how has the drought affected people who like to fish?
Yeah, there's been, some significant issues, right? I mean, but if you're asking me, from my local experience here, it's not so much been the drought, because most of the lake levels are in pretty good shape here, as you know, Chris, right? All of the reservoirs are looking fairly good.
Yeah.
But the heat, July, as you said, when we're in August 1st here, but July was the hottest month on record, at least here where I live. And
worldwide it was, yes.
Worldwide, yeah. And, local fisheries have suffered as a result of that. Lakes that are normally, their thermocline generally tends to turn right around the middle of summer, late July, early August. None of that stuff is happening now. And so the colder waters are staying at the bottom, and, colder waters don't hold as much oxygen. And so the species, trout particularly sensitive to this, are having to go to the warmer lake levels at the top, because that's where the oxygen is. The colder water just starved of oxygen. But then they run into trouble there because of algae outbreaks and all that kind of stuff. So it's been a really tough summer season for local freshwater fishing.
Yeah, and I think it's just going to be a tough year all around. I mean, we're baking, the country, and there's going to be impacts. Like, we're baking farm country. Central Valley is, they're getting those high temperatures. The crops are going to respond in different ways, and most likely less yield, and maybe even crop failures. It's an impact on the ecosystems, because these fish that need cold water are having trouble finding cold water. So there are impacts to the excessive heat that we're not even beginning to talk about yet.
Yeah, just a follow-on question, Chris, when you were when Rob asked you the question about the Klamath, about the dam, and I see that. Do you see that as a leading indicator? Maybe something's going to happen with other dams that that are aging infrastructure and all that. I know we've talked about the Yuba River Dam a couple of times, and whether that might happen again, getting these rivers back to their original historic flows and pathways.
Well, I think the Klamath River is sort of unique in that those dams were only hydropower dams. They weren't water supply dams. So, so they weren't cutting off any farmers or any cities. They had some limited flood control benefits, but not a lot. And the hydropower plants were very old, and they didn't really produce much. So it was like, it was kind of easy to give them up. Yeah, there were some impacts. They're mostly economic. It's very hard for Siskiyou County. They counted on the revenue that they got from those dams, and there are folks up there that were living around these reservoirs and had waterfront properties that don't have waterfront properties. So there are impacts like that I hope that they have financially dealt with those things. But these dams didn't have a lot of use. But other dams, like the Colorado River, they provide a big flood control benefit. We couldn't build below like Hoover Dam and Imperial Valley and all those places without those dams, because the Colorado River could run torrentially. As a matter of fact, the Colorado would run. The Colorado River would go down towards the Imperial Valley, and sometimes it would go into Baja California. Sometimes it would turn around and go into the Imperial Valley. Back then, and it wasn't the Salton Sea; it was Lake Cahuilla. Back in the times before those dams came. So, a lot of these dams, they provide water, they provide flood control, and we just can't take them all out. But the Klamath dams were unique in that, they didn't really have that key. They didn't support really critical things, I guess,
Yeah.
cities and farms.
Yeah, good perspective, Chris. Appreciate that. Robert, we're at the bottom of the hour, buddy.
Yep, we have to go to our commercial break, but for all our listeners, please go to mavensnotebook.com and become a subscriber and hear everything that Chris is talking about every single morning right when you wake up and turn your laptop, PC, or whatever you have on. It's awesome. That's where Chris Davey and I get our information from, amongst others, but typically we stay with Chris Austin's stuff. And if you want to become a sponsor, that's a good thing to do. Go to the same thing, www.mavensnotebook.com. I guarantee you'll enjoy her documents every single day, and you'll know as much as everybody in the water business, maybe more, because she covers everything. So, Chris, thank you very much. We missed you last week. We're glad you're back. And stay safe up there, and I hope the fire goes in that opposite direction and it keeps going and never comes back to you. So you have a good week and stay healthy.
All right. Good evening, everyone.
Have a great week, Chris.
Yeah. All right, we're going to take a commercial break here, a short commercial break, and we'll be back with our featured guest. So stick around. It's going to be a great conversation. We'll be right back.
NBC News on KCAA Loma Linda, sponsored by Teamsters Local 1932, protecting the future of working families. Teamsters1932.org.
Get ready, because the forecast for this May through June is a torrential downpour of points. Site One is proud to introduce our exclusive NDS Point Storm 24 event. Partners Program members who use drainage, hardscapes, and irrigation products can earn up to 4x the rewards in May and June for purchasing quality NDS products. That's 4x the points on a whole range of product solutions for residential and commercial projects. NDS is a leader in water management solutions and is known for superior quality and performance, as well as ease of installation and extreme durability. You can count on Site One and NDS to help you grow your business. NDS Point Storm 24 from May through June. It's the perfect storm of points and performance.
All right, so welcome back to the second half of the Water Zone. So we have a very special guest. Her name is Darcy Burke, and she was elected to the Elsinore Valley Municipal Water District in 2018 and re-elected in 2022, serving Division 1. In 2023, she was appointed to the United States Environmental Protection Agency's Local Government Advisory Committee, where she co-chairs the Water and Climate Adaptation Communication Work Groups. Since 2015, she has served as President, Chief Executive Officer of Watermark Associates, which is a comprehensive business consulting firm. Prior to that, Darcy held positions including Executive Director of California and Nevada Section AWWA, the Executive Director of the Center for Water Education, and that's where I met her 15 years ago, Metropolitan Water District's Education Nonprofit, and the Municipal Water District of Orange County, Director of Public Affairs, and I also worked around with her at that as well. Ms. Burke received her bachelor's degree from Mount St. Mary's University, Los Angeles, in International Economics and Marketing, as well as her master's in Business Administration with an emphasis in organizational leadership, which she definitely has. She completed her field study in energy and utility management in China. So, wow, that's a great resume. Darcy, it is great to talk to you again.
It's great to talk to you as well. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. You know, I was telling Chris Beatty, when I met you roughly 15 years ago at Diamond Valley Lake, that museum center they were setting up for water,
Yep.
You gave me a little pin from that facility, and I still have that. It's sitting on my office desk. So
I love that.
It was an awesome place. You gave me a great tour, and it was just absolutely wonderful. But for our listeners who want to get to know you as much as we do, probably more, what drew you to the water business?
I think I'm an advocate for public health. When it comes down to everything we do, we talk about water supply, we talk about water storage, we talk about reliability. In the end, as a board member, as a water professional, my job is to ensure public health. And with all the other noise out there about all the different things about conservation, about the environment, in the end, that's exactly what it comes down to.
Wow. Everybody, I got to tell you, I tell a lot of women the same thing. You're a wow woman when I think of you, and that means woman of water. So I'm very proud to know you, and you've done amazing work in all the positions that you had. I got to tell you, and you're just one awesome person. I'm going to let Chris jump in and ask a couple questions, and then share the show with him. So, Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Rob.
Chris.
Darcy, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Anytime. It was great when Rob told me that he was courting your participation in one of our programs. I thought that was a great idea. I've actually heard you speak before, and I've been in I think a couple of places where I've heard you speak. So though we're kind of not pizza and beer every Friday, friends, but I do know a bit about you.
You do a podcast.
Yeah, and I know you do your own podcast as well, Darcy.
Yeah.
So congratulations on that. So I mean, I don't know if you were clairvoyant and knew what I was going to ask you, but that's where I was going with the question. I know you do your own podcast. Tell us what that's all about.
Yeah, you actually said pizza and beer, so that's where I immediately thought you went. Because
Yeah.
I have a great opportunity. I get to co-host a podcast sponsored by the Exchange Contractors Political Action Committee with a farmer out of Firebaugh, California, by the name of Darcy Villery, and it's called We Grow California. And we talk everything water, whether it's ag or urban. We talk about innovation. We had Dave Peterson on from Las Virgenes Water District here in Southern California, and he talked about his direct potable reuse and ways he's engaging his community. Is he actually had a local microbrewery make beer with his advanced water that had been treated through his process, and then they hosted a beer and pizza party because the pizza dough is made with that same water. And I thought, what a great way to engage the community, right? Pizza and beer. So when you said that, I knew, oh my gosh, you must listen to the podcast. So we don't always agree. Imagine that. Ag and urban don't always agree. I think sometimes I'm protecting ag more than he is. So it's either sometimes it's Darcy versus Darcy, and yes, that is his real name, or it's Darcy and Darcy. But it's been a wonderful experience. We've had some great guests on. We've had congressmen, senators, farmers, advocates, water managers. So pretty much if you drink water or you like it, you're a candidate to be on the program.
Wow, that's awesome. Now you have a movement you started called the California Water for Food and People movement. Can you tell us how that was founded and what's the purpose? And by the way, let Chris know when you're having the beer. He's going to be up there.
Oh, yeah. We'll have to follow along with Las Virgenes Water District because they do that often. I actually encouraged them to bring some pizza, not the beer, to the Metropolitan Water District board members. I thought maybe that would be a good lunch for them so they can actually see some of the products that's made with DPR water. Actually, Christy Diener started the California Water for Food and People movement, and I met her through that process. And she started it in almost 10 years ago now, and it was a result of issues. It was a grassroots movement about really water restriction. So Christy is a fourth-generation family farmer, and she noticed, like most farmers in California, that the water that they were once allocated was now going out underneath the Golden Gate Bridge. So, and in defense of that effort, it was to save a variety of species, which that effort never resulted in any of those species being saved. Meanwhile, farms were drying up, the cost of water was getting more expensive, and that you saw a lot of ag versus urban efforts because we were all fighting for the same drop. So she started this movement and now has over 29,000 followers. And it's one of the go-to places like the Maven where you can get information on anything related to water, whether it's allocations on the state or federal projects in California, what efforts are maybe happening at the State Water Resources Control Board, different things that are going on with the Groundwater Sustainability Act. Name it, it's there. And a lot of the information actually comes from Chris and the Maven's Notebook. I, too, am a subscriber. I love her information. I'm grateful she does all her homework. But it really was to engage people and get people to be aware of what was going on with water in California. Because as you both know, it's something people always take for granted till they don't have it.
Go ahead, Chris.
Sorry, buddy. I was just going to say, yeah, Darcy. I mean, absolutely. We love Chris Austin as well. But so tell us a little bit about the California Water for Food and People movement. Sort of, from your description, I'm kind of gathering that it was like a self-forming group. If I'm right, Darcy, is that So tell us about that, and then who are the people in there? Who are the folks that are members? Is it organizations? Is it growers? Is it what kind of groups and stuff? Who makes it up?
So it's all of the above. The movement really was started by Christy, right? And it is really a social media platform. So you can find it on Facebook and follow the information. And what she's been able to do, and I'll provide sometimes information. I just gave her a breakdown of literally all my personal opinion, the ridiculousness of the proposed new water bond, where all that money's going. So I was able to get a line-by-line breakdown, and so probably in the next few days you're going to see Christy post it. So really what it was she wanted to have one place people could follow along to see what was happening, whether it was mandatory restrictions, whether it was cutbacks, whether it was fees or penalties, whether it was what effort was made with the Groundwater Sustainability Act. Because realize on September 16th of this year, the Groundwater Sustainability Act will be 10 years old. So right about that time that this happened, Christy started this movement because people had to start paying attention. You'll find people there that are teachers, that are growers, that are water managers, that are engineers, that are manufacturers, that are students. I've seen a wide variety. There is no profile of the type of people that follow along. Pretty much if you live in California and you're concerned about your community or it's impacted your community in any way, some of the cutbacks, you tend to follow along. What I've noticed is people usually get involved with water when a negative impact has happened and they're angry. So a lot of times you can tell someone that's new to the group because the posting, they have an outlet to talk about whether they're going to be put on probation, whether the new pumping restriction fees, that's going to impact their family. Maybe a fourth or fifth or sixth generation farm is going to go out of business anymore because they don't have access to water. So it can become very personal.
And the fines are ridiculously high for the small farming group. And I believe farming is the backbone of this country, and the same with the state of California. I just keep hearing that small farmers just can't cut it anymore. The fines are too heavy in the SGMA arena, and it's just devastating. And I was up north a little while ago, and I noticed a lot of signs on the sides of the freeway talking about water and the need for that, and go talk to your governor and go talk to this and that. Do you see any relief or change on the SGMA? I know they implemented it, but there's a lot of back talk about it. How do you see that?
Well, I get it. Well, I actually spend a lot of time in the Central Valley. Obviously, I work with the exchange contractors and co-host their podcast, but
yeah.
So I work with a lot of growers and farmers, big and small, and I will tell you that people forget that you need water to grow food. So if you like to eat at all, people need to pay attention. So to your point about stigma, I am all about we need to have a sustainable groundwater supply. But what we did wrong was we didn't ensure that there was a surface water supply to augment that. We took that away, right? We put restrictions on our federal projects, and we cut back on our state water projects. And we made sure that they didn't have other access to projects we said we were going to build through the first Prop 1 in 2014. So now you're taking away their groundwater. What are they supposed to grow with? So literally, people are going bankrupt. And when they go bankrupt, that farmland gets retired, not fallowed. And retired means it's out of production forever. So when you look at the cost of food, it's a supply and demand thing. It's Adam Smith. When there's no supply and demand is high, the cost is going to go up. And you're going to see more and more of that. But I want to tell you that I think there's hope. And I think there's hope because of two key things that happened. Don Ortega is the chairman of the Metropolitan Water District right now.
Yeah.
And he is all about collaboration, cooperation, communication. And he has made some agreements that I never thought I would live to see. So he has a couple of memorandums of understanding that involve Bryant Water Authority in Fresno, Westland Water District, and the Blueprint, which is a group of multiple agencies in the Central Valley, including exchange contracts, that have agreed to come together and prioritize projects that will improve water reliability. And it's kind of what we do in the urban world, which is our urban water management plan and our integrated resources management plan, where we say, how much water are we going to need? How are we going to get it there? And what's the least expensive way to do it? And what projects should we build first? And they kind of, for the first time, kind of put their egos aside and they decided to do this. Well, what Don has done, Chairman Ortega, is he's come to the table and say, we want to help. We have water to store, and we can't really move it all the way to Southern California because we haven't invested in an infrastructure in California that'll help do it. What if we store it in your groundwater basin? I'm just using that as an example. That is not something that's actually happened. I'm using that as an example. We have projects we can work together. And maybe we have more financial resources that might work on an interconnection or a different type of pipeline to get the water where we need it to be, where we can access different water. That hasn't happened before. We've always relied on what we've had. And I think with climate change and having to use adaptive management, Don has been able to set the stage to say we need different solutions for the problems we have today. You know, he worked for the governor. He's a graduate of ag leadership, and he worked for Metropolitan. He understands the multifaceted dimensions that California water has. And he's not going to be bullied by the governor, and he's not going to be bullied by the State Water Board, and he's going to work with these partners to make things happen. And I think that's the difference. That's the only reason I see hope. I see the fiefdoms kind of going away. New partnerships are forming to fix it ourselves. And I also see people waking up, sometimes a little late, that we have to take care of ourselves too. We have to not think that we're farmers. Of course they need us. Of course they won't take our water. That's not true. And I would tell you also, farmers are the first environmentalists. They are the ones that are going to take care of that land and pass it on to their children and their children's children. They're not a special interest group that are going to sue you to stop your project and then take that money to sue somebody else. A real environmentalist takes that money and invests it in the project, invest it in that community, and invest it in the land to make things better. That's an environmentalist. These special interest groups have done our state no favors. And the farmer really has. I think George Washington said it best, that farming is the most noble profession a man could have.
Yeah.
And I would have to agree.
Yeah, Darcy, I mean, you know, it's just encouraging to see this grassroots, I mean, truly grassroots, by definition, group coming about. I mean, it's you act like a clearinghouse for all the stuff that's going on. You know, in disclosure here, Rob and I have, you know, researched it a little bit. lots of content, broad content in there. Delta conveyance stuff, wastewater stuff. I see you work with the California Farm Water Coalition, who we've had on the show before. Darcy, so kind of, you've explained some of the projects that are going on. What do you kind of see as the, top one or two challenges facing California and the water sector?
Well, and I'm going to speak for myself, not for the movement.
Sure.
I actually had a poll done in California a few months ago by Justin Wallen, who's actually a nationally well-known research pollster. He's out of D.C. And there had been some information that I saw on another page that had said that Californians are very distrustful of their politicians and that they care about the environment but not at the own risk of their families. They don't think politicians care about their families. And as someone that's now elected, that kind of hurts, right? I used to think, those are the politicians. Once you're elected, it makes you a politician.
Yeah.
So I had Justin do a poll and asked Californians about the State Water Board because they're not elected. They're appointed. They're making broad decisions with no accountability to anybody but the governor. So that's kind of a bizarre situation. And it was incredible to me about how many Californians want the State Water Board to be an elected body. They want to have accountability to more than the governor. They want their interests to be represented, not just one person's interests represented. And I think that's kind of where it's going to come to. I think we're going to come to a head here when people are saying enough, that my family matters, my economy matters, my community matters. This whole conservation is a way of life movement, I was very critical and gave critical testimony at the hearing. Why? Because it penalizes those that live in a warmer area and does the exact opposite of what it should help. So in my area, if I'm going to only remove all the turf, it's going to get hotter as grass keeps cooler. So my kids in my community will have no grass to play on in their own backyards where it's safe. And I can't keep the trees alive with the amount of water they're giving me unless I'm going to microdose a tree. Yeah. And when it's extra hot, is that tree going to die since I have no shade? So I guess if you're an elite coastal person, that works. But the amount of water they're saving at the cost they're saving it is really draconian. And I think people are going to get to a point, because my own community says, Darcy, it's your job to get the water. That's what we elect to do. It's not your job to tell us we can't have the water. So I think we're getting to a point that they just about had it. They're tired of paying a lot for a little and being told, even with all this rain and all this snow, we've built no new projects to put it in. We have no place to put it in and no way to move it because we haven't invested in any of that. And we put it on the backs of our customers. And I think we're getting to the point where people have just about had it.
I heard you. I also attended the hearings for the Make California Conservation in California Saving Life, and I'm sure you were there when Fiona Sanchez got up and made her speech from Irvine Ranch Water. If they spent millions of dollars, that's what she said at that meeting, and they did help reduce water a lot, and now they're asking for a lot more, and now they're going to penalize the water agencies or districts if they can't control or that. And so what's going to happen? The price of water is going to go up. It's going to go back to the customer. The operations of water agencies and districts, you have to pay for that. And if even if you're not selling that much water, you still have to keep operations going and have the staff to do that. And then the fines, I'm afraid it was $1,000 a day, $10,000.
It's up to $10,000 a day. I've actually asked my board to budget for it because I want willful disobedience.
Yeah, and that's amazing to me. And like you said, a bunch of people sit in a forum and run that organization, and they say, this is what we're going to do, so here you go. And just find that tough for a water utility because they can hurt in this, and they're going to, just like, I'm not trying to be political, but it's like, government says they're only going to tax people who make $400,000 a year or more on big companies. What do you think those companies are going to do? They're going to pass on their taxes to everybody who buys their products. It's everybody in a sense is going to have to pay for that. So that's kind of scary. I always ask this question. Maybe it's the appropriate time to do that. So, say the governor came to you and said, "Darcy, you're an awesome wow lady and person, and I want to make you the czar of water in California. What do you see as the top 3 issues that need to be fixed? How would you go forward with that?"
I'm laughing because they had this question asked me at the Orange County Water Summit. and I'm ready. So I would pull out Water Bulletin number 3 that was written in 1957, and I'd start building the projects and finish the state water projects just like you said we would, because it wasn't just water projects, it was energy projects. Water moves, is heavy and it creates energy, and that would be the first thing I would do. The second thing I do is I would address public health. We have major problems of water quality in our smaller systems throughout the state, and rather than spending money on conservation, let's fix those systems so people have access to clean, safe, reliable water. And then the third thing I would do is to help systems find ways to pay for it in new and different ways. We cannot use yesterday's solutions for today's problems. And maybe that means a different type of property tax structure. Maybe that means partnerships with private entities. But we cannot continue the way we're doing it and keep water affordable. Those are the 3 things I would do.
And I would add a 4th one to that, is make sure they bump your compensation up for all the work that you would do. But you're right in everything that you said. And like I said, I heard you speak at the hearing for the State Water Board when they were going back and forth. And GWR says this, and we say this, and it's just got to be a long, drawn-out thing. And I can't see how the water utilities are going to operate and make money anymore. I mean, it's going to be really tough. And it's hard to, when they had the drought back when, everybody complied to that. They helped reduce water, all of them, 25% or more. And that was great. People understand that if you give them education on what's happening and things like that. And I think they all did a good job. But some of the regulations that are coming through are just a little bit drastic, I think. But that's my opinion. So
a little.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to be non-biased. I have to be non-biased. So anyway, hey, we appreciate you for coming on the show, and we got to do this again. And we'd love to talk more about what the movement that you're doing and some of the things that you're involved with. Anytime you want to come back, please just call us, and we'll bring you back, and we'll have a great conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. This is great.
Thanks for coming on, Darcy.
All right. So our listeners, the most important thing that Chris and I tell you every week is please help keep our planet blue. And if you like blue, you're green, you got to have blue. So thank you very much. We'll talk to you next week.
Have a great week, guys. Thanks for tuning in.
NBC